I'm Madison, a 28-year-old who lives with Henry, my boyfriend. We no longer enjoy our connection as much as we once did. We have a lot of arguments lately, even though we have been together since college. Henry doesn't seem to care about making plans for the future, which makes me angry. Instead, I'm left alone in bed while he plays video games most evenings. We avoid discussing our future plans not because we no longer care about one another, but rather because neither of us makes an effort to make things better. We are completely different from my parents, Nathan and Julie. Even after more than 31 years of blissful marriage, they continue to gaze at one another with affection. They demonstrate what a solid partnership should look like and giggle at inner jokes. Though I know deep down that I won't have that with Henry, I've always admired them. Everything changed one night. I got into another argument with Henry, this time about something as trivial as the laundry. He made a commitment to accomplish it, but he never did. "Can't you just do one thing you say you'll do?" I asked, frustrated. "Madison, it's just laundry." He was transfixed to his computer screen and said, "I'll get to it." Nothing was really resolved when the conflict finished. Later that night, I was in the backseat of my parents' car. Their cheerful conversation made me feel a little better after my argument with Henry. We were on our way to celebrate my mom's birthday, and their happiness was infectious. But then everything turned upside down. There was a loud crash, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. The smell of disinfectant and the sound of machines filled the room. A doctor stood nearby, speaking in a calm but cold voice. My parents didn't survive the crash. And then the other news hit me. I might never walk again. At that moment, my world shattered. I felt completely alone and scared. And Henry, the fight about laundry felt like a distant memory, yet it was my only connection to life before the crash. As the shock of my parents' death and the possibility of being paralyzed sank in, I felt an overwhelming despair. The future, once so full of promise, now felt dark and uncertain. Lying in that hospital bed, time seemed to drag and race all at once. Then Henry walked in with his parents, Joyce and Ryan. The room filled with a heavy sadness. Henry sat beside me, holding my hand, his usual confidence gone. His parents stood by the door, their faces filled with worry and uncertainty. "Hey, Madison," Henry said softly, his voice barely audible. I looked at him, my voice flat. "Yes." He took a deep breath. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us." I stared at him, unsure of what he meant. "Thinking," I echoed. "All of this, it's made me realize how short life can be," he said, his eyes locking with mine. There was something in his gaze I couldn't quite read. I don't want to wait for the perfect moment anymore because it might never come. I wanted to ask him what he was getting at, but my words wouldn't come. Then he said it. "What I'm trying to say is, will you marry me, Madison?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. It was the last thing I expected, especially now. I searched his face, looking for the impulsive Henry I first knew, the one who often acted without thinking. But all I saw was sincerity. Joyce stepped forward, her hands clasped tightly. "We want you to be part of our family, Madison. We'll take care of you," Ryan quickly added. "It's not out of pity, it's because we care about you. We love you and want to support Henry in this." I was stunned, my mind spinning. This was so unexpected, maybe even a little reckless, but at the same time it felt like a lifeline in the middle of the chaos. I looked back at Henry, really looked at him for the first time. I didn't just see the boyfriend who sometimes frustrated me. I saw someone offering me his love and support during the most uncertain time of my life. "Henry," I faltered as I tried to find the right words. "It's okay, Madison," he said, his thumb gently rubbing circles on the back of my hand. You don't have to decide right now. I thought about my parents, their constant love and support, how they always wanted the best for me. Wouldn't they want me to be with someone who cared for me no matter what? I took a deep breath. Henry, I don't know what the future holds for me, for us, I said honestly. But yes, the word came out stronger than I felt. Yes, I'll marry you. For the first time in days, a genuine smile lit up Henry's face. Joyce let out a soft sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Even Ryan's eyes shimmered with tears. Moving into my parents' house with Henry was supposed to be a fresh start, a new beginning. But instead, it felt like I was living in a museum of memories. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of my parents, their laughter, their warmth, their love. I thought having Henry with me would ease the emptiness, but instead, his presence seemed to highlight what was missing. At first, Henry was attentive. He checked on me constantly and made sure I had everything I needed. But as time went on, things began to change. He spent more and more time at his computer, shutting me out. One evening, I found him in the kitchen staring at his screen. I tried to keep my tone light as I said, "Henry, have you thought about looking for a new job? The insurance won't cover everything and the bills are piling up." Without looking up, he replied, "I told you, Madison, I'm taking care of you now. That's my job." I felt a flicker of frustration. "I can take care of myself during the day. You don't have to be here all the time," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Finally, he turned to face me, his expression annoyed. "What do you want from me, Madison? I'm here, aren't I?" His tone took me by surprise. "Being physically here isn't the same as being present, Henry. I need a partner, not just a roommate." He stood up suddenly, the chair scraping loudly against the tile. "You know what, Madison? Maybe I need more than this, too. Maybe I'm not cut out to be a nurse." His words hit me like a slap. I watched as he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The kitchen fell silent, the weight of his words pressing down on me. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how quickly the good times had faded. The vows we'd taken in sickness and in health felt like they belonged to another lifetime. The Henry who had promised to stand by me now felt like a stranger. As the weeks dragged on, things only got worse. Henry's absences grew longer and his excuses weaker. He was either out with his friends or lost in a digital world that didn't seem to have room for me anymore. I felt like a problem Henry didn't expect or wasn't ready to carry. One especially hard day when the pain was unbearable and the house felt more like a lonely prison than a home, I heard the front door open. Hoping it was Henry, I called out, "Is that you?" "Yeah, it's me," he answered, his voice distant. "I'm just grabbing a few things, then heading out again." "Heading out with your friends?" I asked, trying to hide the sadness in my voice. He paused, keys in hand, and sighed. "Madison, I need some space, okay? This isn't easy for me either, all of this." I nodded, holding back tears. "I know. I just thought maybe we could spend some time together, like we used to." He shrugged and avoided my eyes. "Maybe when things settle down a bit. I've got to go." With each passing day, the house grew emptier. It wasn't just Henry's absence or the silence left behind by my parents' voices. It was the little things, a vase my mom loved, a painting that used to hang in the hallway. Things began to disappear. I noticed it first when I was trying to distract myself with memories. I wheeled into the living room, planning to look through some old photo albums, but as my eyes wandered the room, I saw the bare patch of wall where my mom's favorite painting had hung. Confused, I frowned. "Henry," I called, unsure of when he'd last been home. The house echoed back in silence. Later, when Henry finally returned, I asked, "Have you seen the landscape painting that was in the hallway?" Barely looking up from his phone, he replied, "Oh, that old thing. Yeah, it was getting dusty, so I figured we could use the space for something else." His casual tone didn't sit right with me. "But it was my mom's favorite," I said, my voice trembling with unease. He shrugged again, still glued to his phone. "We can get another painting, Madison. It's no big deal." But it was a big deal. The items disappearing weren't just decorations, they were family treasures. The next things that went missing weren't random. They were unmistakably important. One afternoon, I finally caught Joyce, Henry's mom, red-handed. She was moving through the living room with a big black garbage bag in her hands. "Joyce, what are you doing?" I asked sharply, alarmed. She jumped, her face flushing with guilt. "Oh, just doing a little spring cleaning, dear. This place is cluttered with so many old things." "But those are my things," I said, my voice rising. I protested, my heart racing. "Those are my things." "They're there," Joyce said in a sugary tone. "We're just making things nicer for you. You'll thank us later." After that, I kept a close eye on her every time she visited, but the thefts didn't stop. They just became sneakier, more calculated. Every time I brought it up, they brushed it off, insisting it was all for my benefit. One night, lying in bed, I turned to Henry, who was scrolling through his phone as usual. "Henry," I began, "your parents have been taking things from the house." "My things." He didn't even look up. "Mom's just trying to help, you know. She's good at this kind of stuff." "Helps," I repeated, disbelief thick in my voice. "By taking my parents' belongings." Finally, he sighed and set his phone down. "Look, Madison, they think we should be moving forward, not holding on to the past. They're just trying to lighten the load for you." I wanted to yell, to scream at the unfairness, the lack of respect. But I was so tired of fighting, tired of doubting myself. "This isn't what I want," I said softly, my energy drained. Henry reached over and patted my hand, but instead of comfort, it felt dismissive. "Try to get some sleep, Madison. Things will feel better in the morning." But they didn't feel better. I couldn't take it anymore. The only person I trusted was Kelly, my closest friend and a massage therapist helping with my rehabilitation. Her visits were the only thing that brought me any relief. "Kelly," I confided one day as she worked on my tense shoulders, "things are going missing around the house, and I can't shake the feeling that Henry and his parents are behind it." Kelly paused, her hand still. "Have you talked to Henry about it?" "I did," I said with a bitter laugh. "He just brushes it off, says his parents are helping us by decluttering, but it's only my family's things that are disappearing." Her brows knit in concern. "That doesn't sound right, Madison. Do you want me to do something? Maybe I could come by more often, keep an eye out." Her offer sparked an idea in me, a flicker of determination amidst my frustration. "Could you?" I asked, hope creeping into my voice. A plan was starting to take shape. "I don't know, maybe you can help me set up a camera or something to see what's happening when I'm not in the room," I said, desperate for answers. Kelly nodded with determination. "I'll bring something over tomorrow. We'll figure this out." True to her word, Kelly returned the next day with small recording devices. She carefully placed them in key spots around the house. It felt like something out of a spy movie, and if I weren't so desperate, I might have laughed at how ridiculous it all seemed. A few days later, Kelly came back with the recordings. We sat down together, anxious to hear what they captured. As the voices of Henry and his parents played, my blood ran cold. Their plan unfolded through casual conversation, their words like daggers. "And once we get her committed, the house and everything in it will be ours," Henry said, his voice calm and chilling. "Yeah, the place will sell for a fortune, and all those antiques, pure profit, his mother added greedily, "We just need to make sure Madison doesn't catch on before everything is set," his father chimed in. Tears streamed down my face as I listened to their betrayal. These were the people who promised to take care of me, who said they'd be my family. Now they were plotting to take everything from me. Kelly reached over, gripping my hand tightly. "We have to do something, Madison," she said, her voice filled with anger. I wiped my eyes, sorrow replaced by a fierce determination. "We will. I'm not letting them get away with this." The next morning, I tried to act normal, but every word they spoke and every fake smile felt like a lie. During breakfast, something felt wrong. The usual city sounds drifting through the open window were gone. Curious, I wheeled myself over to the window, only to find that the ramps leading to the garden were missing. "Henry," I called, panic rising in my voice. "Where are the ramps?" He walked into the room, fidgeting, confusion in his eyes. "The ramps? Oh, they looked a bit worn. I thought they needed fixing." I stared at him, the man I once trusted. "And you didn't think to tell me. How am I supposed to get around?" He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "I just thought you'd be safer inside for now, until we get new ones." The room seemed to spin around me, and it wasn't for my injury. Safer or trapped? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He didn't answer. He just turned and walked away, leaving me boiling with a mix of anger and helplessness. Later, when I asked Joyce about the missing ramps, she spoke in her usual syrupy tone, fake concern dripping from her words. "We're just looking out for you, dear. We wouldn't want you to have an accident," she said lightly, patting my shoulder. I pulled back from her touch, the sting of their deceit cutting deep. "I didn't realize needing ramps was considered a hazard," I replied, my voice steady, even though my insides felt like they were shaking. For a moment, Joyce's eyes hardened, but she quickly masked it with her usual fake warmth. "We're just trying to help. Madison, it's for the best." That night, lying in bed, the darkness felt heavier than ever. Henry was out again, probably drowning his guilt in cheap beer and fleeting distractions. I reached for my phone, its glow piercing the night, and dialed the emergency number Kelly had given me. "Kelly," I whispered when she picked up. "They've removed the ramp. I'm literally trapped in my own home." Her voice was firm, steady, a lifeline I desperately needed. "Hang tight, Madison. I'll make some calls. We're going to fix this." The next day, the doorbell rang. My heart raced as I maneuvered toward the door. Standing there was Kelly, flanked by 3 professionals dressed in sharp suits with serious expressions. They introduced themselves as representatives from a local disability rights organization. Beside them was Mr. Jeffrey, my lawyer, holding a leather briefcase. "Madison, we're here to make things right," Kelly said, her determination reflecting the newfound resolve in my chest. Mr. Jeffrey stepped forward, his tone calm but authoritative. "We need to establish the facts first, Madison. I'll need to inspect the house and check against the inventory of your parents' belongings." As we moved through the house, the representatives took notes. Their disapproval was clear when they saw the missing ramps and the blatant neglect of my needs. The atmosphere was tense, the truth finally being brought to light. Henry walked in during the commotion, surprise plastered across his face. "Madison, what's going on? Who are these people?" he asked, his voice shaky. I turned to him, letting my gaze pierce through his facade. "I'm taking back control, Henry. This is my lawyer, and these are advocates for people with disabilities. They're here to make sure my home is safe and that my rights are respected." Before he could respond, Joyce and Ryan appeared. Their confusion quickly turned to fear as they realized the gravity of the situation. "Madison, darling, What's all this about?" Joyce stammered, her voice trembling. "It's about my rights, my home, and the truth," I said firmly, my voice unwavering. The time for their manipulation was over. I spoke, my voice steady, even though I felt a storm raging inside me. "Mr. Jeffrey is here to review the inventory of my inheritance." Mr. Jeffrey opened his briefcase, pulling out documents and photographs. "We have detailed records of all items left to Mrs. Harper. It appears several are missing." Ryan's face turned pale. "Now, Madison, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "There's no misunderstanding," I replied, the recordings Kelly had provided replaying in my mind. "And there's more than just missing items to address." Henry's parents exchanged nervous glances. The fake kindness they'd shown me crumbled right in front of my eyes. Henry stood silently, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. Kelly stepped closer, her voice firm. "We also have evidence of your conversations about Madison's property and her well-being." One of the advocates from the Disability Service added, "Removing access to the ramps is a direct violation of Mrs. Harper's rights. We'll be taking action." As Mr. Jeffrey presented the evidence, proof of their theft and plans for my future, I could finally see the trap they had set for me. But now the tables had turned. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was in control. Henry finally found his voice. "Madison, I can explain." I shook my head, cutting him off. "Save it, Henry. I've heard enough." Joyce began to cry, and Ryan put an arm around her, but there was no comfort to be found in their lies. The day of the trial, the courtroom was cold and quiet, the tension thick in the air. On one side sat Henry and his parents, looking nothing like the family who once promised to care for me. On the other side, I sat with Kelly by my side and Mr. Jeffrey, ready with his stack of evidence. The judge looked down from his bench, his eyes briefly meeting mine. "We are here to examine the evidence regarding allegations of theft and the exploitation of Madison Harper," he began. Mr. Jeffrey stood and methodically presented everything: the recordings, the discrepancies in the inventory, and statements from the disability advocates. Each piece of evidence added weight to their guilt. Henry's family squirmed in their seats, the truth of their actions impossible to deny. Joyce sobbed softly, her tears the backdrop to the unraveling of their scheme. When it was her turn to speak, she whispered, "We never meant for it to go this far." The judge's voice was stern as he addressed them. "You took advantage of a vulnerable person. There is no excuse for your actions." Finally, Henry spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Madison. I never wanted to hurt you." But the damage was done, and no apology could undo what they had tried to take from me. I looked at Henry, memories of our time together flashing through my mind. "Sorry isn't enough, Henry. You made your choice." The judge's gavel came down, a final word on the life I had once known. Henry and his parents were found guilty. They were ordered to pay reparations and were forbidden from contacting me again. With Kelly and a team of dedicated professionals by my side, I began physical therapy. Each small movement felt like a hard-won victory. Slowly but surely, I started to regain strength. My once dead legs started to quiver with fresh vitality. One day, Kelly cheered and clapped as I stood with the support of parallel bars. "Observe yourself, Madison. You're succeeding." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I couldn't resist grinning. "I am, aren't I? Joy bursting from a place I believed was irreparable," I murmured. From that point on, I took things day by day, one step at a time. Once replete with distressing memories, the mansion was converted into a haven of solace and recovery. It developed into a haven where I could start over, getting stronger every day.